G'day guys, thanks for joining me for another episode of Ask Steve. And in this one I'm going to answer one of the biggest questions that we get. G'day guys, now one of the questions that comes up all the time when thinking about doing the big lap is the money. How much is it going to cost? How much money are we going to need to do this trip? So as it turns out, one of the first questions I've gotten on the Ask Steve email address is from Kevin Branch, and it goes like this. Hi Steve, I've looked at a few of your DVDs and think they're great, so keep up the good work. Thanks Kevin. Can you give me a rough estimation on what the cost would be per week or month towing a 22-foot van doing the big lap? We're hoping to do free camping most of the time, so I would say 50-50. We drive a diesel Land Cruiser. Okay Kevin, that's a fantastic question, and obviously for me to answer that question I'd need to know a lot more about you and your setup and things that are relevant to you. And that's the big problem when trying to work out or listening to someone else's advice on how much it's going to cost to do the big lap. Now, if you go on Facebook and forums and things like that, the Facebook groups, and you ask the question, often you'll hear, oh, it's $1 a kilometre or $1,000 a week or whatever. And everybody has their own ideas on it, and people who've done it will all have some idea of what it costs them. But the thing is, it's different for everybody, because if you're a young couple in an old Land Cruiser troop carrier and you're going to free camp your way around the country, well, the cost of that trip is going to be vastly different than if you're a family of 5 in a big caravan with a new 4-wheel drive and a home with a mortgage back in the home state. Your costs are completely different. So me saying, oh, well, it's going to cost you this much is a fairly meaningless figure. So to answer the question of how much is it going to cost to drive around Australia, the best way is for each person to look at their own individual situation. And the best way to do that is with this spreadsheet, which we call the Big Lap Budget Spreadsheet. Now, we published this originally back in 2012 and put it up on our website as a free download. And since then, it's been downloaded nearly 40,000 times, which gives us a pretty good indication that it's a big question on people's minds. So, Kevin, the best way for me to answer it for you is to basically show you a quick overview of how this spreadsheet works, and then you can come and download it yourself, and anybody else watching this, come and download a copy of the spreadsheet and start to work it out yourself. Put in the figures and you'll start to see an idea of what sort of money you're going to need to be able to do the big lap. So the spreadsheet's quite simple. It's only one page. It's made in Excel, and it'll work in any spreadsheet program. It looks colourful and pretty, but ultimately it's a very, very super simple spreadsheet. It hasn't got any big complex formulas or multiple pages doing things in the back end. It's designed to be simple, and you can open it in Excel or Google Sheets or Apple Numbers or whatever spreadsheet program you've got. It'll work. It's divided into 9 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you just basically work your way through. And your job is to put the numbers into the yellow sections that are relevant to you. And then what you'll end up with down here is your monthly surplus or shortfall. In other words, how much money you're going to have on average each month left over, or how much you're going to come up short. So let's just start. So let's say, for example, Kevin, that you're planning to do a 12-month trip. So we'll put in 12 because that is probably the most typical length. Now you said you're going to do a 50-50 of free camping and others, which I presume would be caravan parks or national parks. So the first thing we do is work out our accommodation. Now we say, okay, well, ultimately what we need to do is put the number of nights per month that we expect to stay in all of the various types of accommodation. Now, accommodation and fuel and food are going to be your biggest expenses on the trip. So they're the ones right up front that we get stuck into first. So let's start with accommodation. Basically what we do is we put in the number of nights per month we expect to stay in national parks, caravan parks, hotels, or bush camping, free camping in other words. Now in Kevin's case, he reckons he can do 50% bush camping or free camping, so we'll put 15, being 15 nights a month. And he said the other 50% will be in everything else. So let's say he does sort of 8 caravan parks, 7 national parks, and no hotels or motels. So now this has turned green, which means we've got the numbers here correct. And we also need to estimate what's it going to be on average per night to stay in the various types of accommodation. Now obviously bush camping is free, free camping is free of course. Now I started with a number of $40 a night here for a caravan park. Now this could vary from $20 to $100. It is a big variation. If you're going to stay, it's just the 2 of you, no kids, and you're staying in an unpowered site, then you're probably going to be closer to the $20 to $40 range. if you've got 3 kids and you're staying in a flashy holiday park, and you've got a powered site, you could be spending $60, $70, $80, $100 a night. So the reason this is a variable, because you've got to basically figure this one out and put it in for yourself. So in this case, let's say that you've got Kevin is just Kevin doesn't mention having any kids, so we'll just assume it's the 2 of them, and we'll put in an estimate of say $50 a night. National parks, much cheaper than caravan parks, but not generally free. So let's put an average of say $20 a night there, although it's probably realistically going to be a bit less than that. So that shows us that our accommodation per month on average is going to be around about $540. Next one is fuel. This is where basically we work out the fuel usage of your vehicle. Now this is another area that's going to vary a lot. If you big 4-drive towing a big van is going to use a lot more fuel than a smaller vehicle that's not towing something. So in this case, let's say Kevin averages, he's towing a 22-foot van with a Land Cruiser diesel. Let's say an average of 20 litres per 100 kilometres. That could be a few litres either way. Kevin, you'll know. You'll know what sort of fuel you're using. Now what you do is you put in the current city price of fuel. Now at the moment today, diesel's around about $1.50 a litre. Now it puts a remote fuel loading in here because it says that some of your fuel you're going to buy in cities and built up areas, which will be at the sort of the cheapest price. And other times you're going to be buying fuel at remoter places, it's going to be more expensive. So we've added this fuel loading which says, okay, let's say that it's on average 25% more than the current city price. Now you can change that if you want, you can make it 30%, it's up to you. And it's going to show you the average fuel cost per litre for the whole trip is going to be about $1.95. How far do you expect to travel? Once again, you probably got some sense of how far you plan to go. If you just drove right around Highway 1 all the way around Australia, you could do it in about 15,000 kilometres, but nobody does that. You're going to deviate off here and there. You might go down into the centre, you might go up to Cape York. There's lots of variation. We did 46,600 kilometres on our trip, so we did sort of 3 times the actual distance around, just around the outside. So for this example, I've got 35,000 kilometres, which is probably a reasonably good average, and that's going to show you approximately going to need about $1,138 per month for fuel. Now food, you know how much you need to spend on food. I've got a figure in here of $200 a week. I mean, here in the city with the family, we spend a lot more than $200 a week. If it's just a couple, you might spend less than that. But put in roughly how much you expect to spend per week, and just probably build in a bit of fat there, because sometimes you're going to be buying food at remote areas. It's going to be a little bit more expensive. So let's say, for example, $250 a week. If you're going to eat out along the way, I've got 25. That's probably a bit of an underestimate. $50 would get you a decent couple of decent pub dinners once a week, and we've got an approximate monthly food cost of $1,290. Now these numbers are rough, but it gives you a sense of where you're starting from, and you can obviously just fine tune them as much as you like. Now moving over to number 5, this is our other expenses, and this is broken up into your cost of your mortgage at home, home rental expenses, like if you're renting out your house, your agent's fees and maintenance and things like that, your insurance, how much it's going to cost you to store your worldly possessions back at home. If you've got an investment property, how much of that's going to cost you. So these are basically just prompts for you to put in the sort of expenses that aren't not related to your trip. And then as we move down, we move in your vehicle expenses. If you've got finance on your vehicle, your loan repayments, maintenance costs as you go along, and you're going to need to estimate that. You might need to get 3 or 4 services along the way. So you build those in, and this is all per month. So you need to basically say, okay, well on average we might spend $150 a month on vehicle maintenance. Or we might spend, so if our vehicle registration insurance is a total of $2,500 a year, so it's roughly $200 a month. So you basically put in the numbers that are relevant to you, and it'll calculate, and you'll end up down here with approximate monthly expenses. And there's a 10% contingency there just for a bit of fat that things you haven't thought of. Then once we've done that, we move over to one-off expenses. Big expenses you might incur on the trip. This might be, for example, you're going to go across to Tasmania on the Spirit of Tasmania, and that's going to be $2,000 for that fare. Or what's another one? You're going to fly home halfway through your trip and visit the family for a couple of weeks. So you've got $1,000 worth of airfares. So if there's any sort of one-off big hits that you're going to hit, you expect to spend along the way, then you can total them up and put them in that figure there in number 6. Any income you expect to get along the way. You know, if you're renting out your house, what the income is there, any investment income from shares or anything like that. Income from work while you're traveling. You might be planning to work along the way, so you might sort of say, oh, well, we expect to earn $1,000 a month while we're traveling. And just any other income that you wanted to include in there, superannuation or whatever you like. It's basically just a field there. If you don't fill it in, it's zero, but if you've got a number to put in there, put it in there. And then we come to our starting cash balance. How much money basically have you got in the bank when you hit the road? Any other one-off cash income, let's say you're getting a tax return at the end of the year and you're going to get $10,000 back, you could put that in there. Once again, it's a bit like the one-off expenses. These are one-off income amounts that you expect to earn along the way, and you put that figure in there. Then we get to the equation at the end, which is your total monthly income. It's averaged out over the number of months of your trip, and your total expenses, once again, averaged out. That gives us a surplus or a shortfall per month, and a surplus or a shortfall for the entire trip. Now, obviously, if it's green, it's positive. It's saying that you've got extra money, you've got enough. But obviously, I haven't put in all the expenses here. So I've done a much more comprehensive walkthrough of this, where I put in all the figures and until we get to our bottom line. But the gist of it is, you want to get to a green bottom line. If that's red, then that means you haven't got enough money, and you can go back and keep working the numbers until you get it right. So this is the simplest way to get started. Now it's designed to be simple. It's not going to tell you everything about everything. It's a starting point, but at least you'll get a feel for how much we're going to have to save up and how much we might need to earn along the way. If we rent our house out, how much will we get from that? Will that offset the mortgage? It's a point to start working from. So if you want a copy of the spreadsheet, go to thebiglap.tv/spreadsheet. That'll take you to the page on our website, which is this one here, and it'll show you where to, it'll give you the opportunity to download it. Just put in your name, your email address, and we'll send you a link to download it. You can download it, and you can work it to your heart's content until you figure out what sort of money you're going to need to do your trip. So when you get to the download page, you'll see there that there's a longer video that'll take you right through the whole thing step by step, and you can work it all out. Now, this is a spreadsheet that lives on your computer. You're not working anything out on our website or anything like that, so we'll never see these figures, nor will anybody else. You're just literally going to download the spreadsheet, open it up on your laptop or your PC or whatever, Mac or Windows, doesn't matter, and work through it. And hopefully, in the space of probably about 20 minutes or half an hour, you'll have a pretty solid sense of how much money you're going to need to do your big lap. Now, if you've got a question for me about doing the big lap, email it to us, steve@thebiglap.tv, and I'll do my best to give you the best answer I possibly can in a video like this one, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.